Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of the Carlson Cards podcast, where we interview longtime collectors to learn more about their strategies and ways they've gone about growing a collection. Today's guest is definitely a longtime collector. He's pretty well known around the hobby. He's the CEO of Collectors, who happens to own PSA, Golden, Card Ladder, to name a few. And we had a chance to sit down today and do an amazing interview that I really enjoyed. We talked on a ton of topics, and we dove very deep on his set hunt currently for the PMG green set out of 1997 Skybox Metal Universe. Nat only has 3 left to complete the set, which by my estimation has got to be one of the best set chases of all time. It was just really awesome to learn from him and hear really what it takes to find these cards, where the issue is not having the money, the issue is finding the cards and convincing collectors to let go of them. Without further ado, let's kick it over to the conversation, and thanks so much for tuning in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of the Carlson Cards podcast. Crazy to think we're on episode 20. We have a very fun one here today, and we're very grateful to our guests for hopping on here. I was just mentioning to Nat, I just got done listening to his interview, got to be 4 years ago now, with Josh, Cardboard Chronicles. We're talking before this episode already about where have the cards gone? You still have all of them, that sort of thing. It's kind of funny how the evolution goes over 3-4 years. So first of all, Nat, how are you doing? And again, really appreciate you joining here. How's your week been so far?
Good. It's only Monday. Just started.
Yeah, I know we were chatting. And it's funny. You just said, very relatable. You had an order pop and we were chatting about that. So any cool grades you want to share just now that you had?
Yeah, well, I got some cool stuff. I mean, as I was saying, I got 106 cards back. Most of it were like boxes I opened over the summer, but early summer, like June. But yeah, I didn't get a single 10 out of 106 cards, which is what it is. But I got a Steve Francis Hats Off from Skybox Dominion. That got a 6, but I mean, I love that card with the piece of the hat, the relic on it. Yeah, I mean, nothing. A lot of the stuff is for my sets, like I bought a bunch of the red labels from Topps Gold Label 99, which are cool. I love that design. So, but mostly 6s, 7s, 8s, but those, they're numbered to either 25, 50, or 100. So I don't really, the serial numbered stuff, the grade doesn't really matter to me. But yeah.
I was going to ask that. So a quick question, maybe to kind of initiate this conversation too. One of the themes I got, again, this is 4 years ago, so not holding you to everything. I know we all change, but it was funny. I really liked in that interview seeing how, it seemed like to you, the grades on a lot of these cards really, weren't that important, right? You had like some sets. I remember you had talked about like at the time you're going for the BGS 9.5s for every LeBron James at the time, all that stuff. I'm just curious, like evolution wise for you, are you still in that mindset of like grades don't matter? Or do you try to upgrade at this point when you can?
Oh, well, no, it really depends on what it is. I mean, for rare cards like PMGs, like the greens and reds and whatever, and credentials and rubies, like those, the grade doesn't matter to me because acquiring the card is frankly harder than any grade. Just getting the card in the first place is 95% of the battle or more. But for like vintage sets, grade really matters to me and to a lot of people. For like base sets, basically it's anything where the cards are plentiful, like 97 metal base set, like 9s and 10, like that for the sets, because there's so many, you need to differentiate. And the only way to do it then is quality, because the rarity's they're not rare. So yeah, for that kind of stuff, I focus on grade. But then I try and do all the Jordan stuff. I used to have a BGS 9.5 of like pretty much every Jordan that mattered, in my opinion, like with the stuff that I cared about as a kid and whatever. I've transitioned that. I've sold or tried to cross over most of those. I'm trying to get PSA 10s of all that stuff now. It's damn near impossible because I think the pricing of those, I can't believe what some of these like Jordan and like Intimidation Nation went for like $26,000 or something, PSA 10. But yeah, I missed the boat on that timing wise. Because I bought so many of those as BGS. But I had a lot of them as PSA too. So on those, I try and 10, and then LeBron, I'm trying to transition the rookie collection from BGS 9.5 to PSA 10. It's also impossible. I mean, I had a BGS 9.5 exquisite RPA that, like there's 110 and like the guy would never sell it. So I mean, it's not going to happen.
Does that bother you when you go for the set? Josh, when I interviewed him, was very adamant about this. He's like, it drives him insane if he has the entire run or the entire set, and there's that one that I don't know if you just can't get it, or there's, like you said, there's one in the pop and the guy's never letting it go. Does that drive you nuts a little bit? Like
Yeah,
the
of
rest of
course. Yeah, of course it
us?
does. Yeah, but I mean that's the fun and beauty of collecting is there's always something you can improve or upgrade your collection with or set with, and there's no perfect collection out there. I would argue, but yeah, I mean, I haven't seen like a good examples. 75 Tops Mini. I have like a bunch of the boxes, that I opened, like here in my office, but like the guy in number one is an absolute freak show in the set registry. Like I'm number two, and like there's no way. Like I was doing the math. Like if I got every PSA 10 that he doesn't have, like if there's a pop two and he has one and the other ones I don't have, if I got every single one of those, I still would be number two. So, it's freaking impossible.
This guy's got decades on you. I was
Yeah.
asking, you kind of already alluded to this with the boxer that you grabbed. Do you find it more satisfying when you have, let's say, again, you can go, I mean, you're Nat Turner, right? You can go hunt down a card like the rest of us, but do you find it more satisfying if you open a pack, you have this box for a while, you get the urge, you open it, and then you get that card that fits your set? Like, it's got to be more satisfying,
Of
right?
course, yeah. I mean, I very rarely have pulled a card that I needed for a set because most of my sets are inserts or parallels that are hard to pull of any player.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I recently pulled a 99 Skybox Rubies Marcus Camby, which I needed for my Rubies 99 set. That was cool. But I mean, that's, you could buy those. Those are pretty cheap. But yeah, I mean, pulling a card is way more satisfying than buying one, obviously.
Yeah, it's got that your own touch to it, right? You got the memory of grabbing, instead of just
Yeah.
opening the envelope, you have the memory of the pack in the box. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I pulled the Kittles Green years ago as a kid, but I don't know. I don't remember the serial number. So I have a 10% chance of the one I own is actually the one I pulled as a kid, but I don't
What
know.
happened to it then when you were a kid?
I
Where'd that
traded
thing
it to
go?
the shop for store credit.
Man, they
Yeah.
got you, huh?
Yeah.
So speaking of the green set, Nat, obviously I mentioned this when I reached out to you that I'd love to ask about, that set a little bit. And what's hilarious to me again too is, like I said, I went back and listened to an interview from 2019 off a recommendation from somebody. And what's awesome to me is that back then you needed 10 cards for the PMG 1997 Metal Universe set. I believe you're down to 3, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess take me through this. So number one, I guess, why is that set important to you? And then number two, what have we missed since that interview with Josh? Like how did it take 4 years to get 7 cards, right? That's so most people that sounds obscene, but like, why was that a thing? And how did that journey go so far?
Yeah. I mean, PMG Greens, I mean, it's not everyone's favorite set. I mean, it's mine. It's the most iconic, in my opinion, very biased, humble opinion, the most iconic, like it's like just the 90s set. Like you look at the design, the players in it. The one thing I love about it is it was a relatively cheap product. It was under $5 a pack. You could buy them at Walmart, although the retail you couldn't get the PMGs. But I mean, it was so beautiful and innovative. The foil design, the futuristic, like Marvel designers designed this like sci-fi background for every player, with like flames coming off of the basketball. And it just doesn't get any more 90s than that. And 97, I think, is like the peak year of basketball cards. I mean, it's when like serial numbers and patches and jerseys and the combo of all three and insert parallels and it's like all of that just kind of came to this great like culmination that year. And Jordan's final, year with the Bulls and it was just such an awesome. It's my favorite year of cards, probably, right? And PMG Green, it doesn't get any better. It's rare. There's only 10 of each player. And like I said, it was a relatively common pack. And so kids pulled them like me. I pulled the Kittles. And, they were upside down in the pack. So you didn't know what you pulled. Like you'd have a stack of base cards and then one of the base cards would be flipped over. And then, it's a really cool thing. And so, kids probably could have had them in binders and thrown them away or in trunks or whatever. And so I fully believe that most of the 10 that are out there of each player actually are not in circulation. There's quite a few big guys like Barkley, I know, and let's see, Grant Hill, obviously Jordan, Kobe, like more than 5 or majority of them are accounted for. But like those players you were likely to keep around, right? So for me in the last 4 years, a lot of the big 2 players I was missing for the longest time that were big, I'm still missing John Stockton, and the other was Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett, I only knew of 2. One of them was in Shanghai. Guy finally agreed to sell it to me. I had someone like meet him in Shanghai, fly the card to me. And it was the craziest story because like the card shows up in California. I was in California, and then the next day it got stolen from my car.
I
And
think
so
I remember now, right when you said Kevin Garnett, I was like, I can't remember if that was a Tim Duncan or a Garnett that
no,
got
it was
stolen.
Garnett. Like I had it in my backpack with my iPad, and thank God my iPad was on and charged. And we did the find my iPhone thing with the police, and then every single card was recovered. I mean, I probably had 200 cards stolen out of that box that day, and like that one, and there's a Babe Ruth and all sorts of cards, but like that Kevin Garnett was 10 times the most valuable card in that bucket. And also the most precious to me, no pun intended. And the police, like I sat down with all of them and I was like, which one of these cards do you think is the most valuable? And, none of them picked the Kevin Garnett. But yeah, I had it in my possession for less than a day before it was stolen. But now I have it back, obviously. So yeah, that. And then, but what I was getting to is those common cards are really tough because so many of them are not actually in circulation. They're either in packs or lost, in my opinion. So like guys like Del Curry, I had never seen Del Curry, Robert Pack, or Brian Grant. And in a matter of a year, Del Curry pops up in Japan, and then Brian Grant pops up in Japan. Like, what are the odds of that?
Especially Japan. I mean, you probably know better than myself, but that's not the country I hear of typically
Totally.
where the cards end up.
But both of those, I had never seen those 3 cards, and 2 of them, no one had seen. They're not in any population report, any grading company. And I was worried, like those are the 3 cards that I would never find. Like I just finished it missing 3, but now I've only never seen Robert Pack. But yeah, and then a really nice collector agreed to sell me LaFonso Ellis. I've seen 2 of those. Who else did I pick up in the recent past? Was it John Wallace? Yeah, anyway, I mean, I basically find like one every 6 months, but now it's John Stockton, Robert Pack, and Christian Laettner. I know where 2 John Stocktons are and 1 Christian Laettner's in Korea, South Korea. But Robert Pack is out there.
I was going to say, at this point, now that you know where those are, how do you approach those conversations, right? Like, I imagine you have to be respectful about it, especially if it means a lot to the collector who has it, right? Regardless of, I'd imagine financially what you offer them, it's probably more into this equation is the attachment to the card to some of these collectors. How do you approach those conversations typically?
Well, the problem with PMG greens, and I think it was the same for Spinatron with like essential credentials now and futures, like PMG green generally, if you're a player collector of a player from the 90s and that player has a PMG green, it's probably that player's best card. And so when you approach, like I remember Ron Mercer, Antoine Walker, Sean Kemp, like these are players that had like really big player collectors. And like those start cards in particular in Penny are really tough to get out of those guys because they're player collectors. They weren't collecting the set. The guy with Brian Grant, thankfully, wasn't really like he was more of a Barkley collector, so I could trade him for a Barkley card. But I just say, look, like the guy with the Stockton I know is a power collector of Stockton. He lived in Utah. Like it's an awesome collection. Like I'm not expecting him. Like I basically just am going to have to be patient and and it's totally fine. Like honestly, just knowing that it's out there is 50% of the Robert Pack one, like I lose sleep over because I may never find the card. And I have boxes, but like, the odds of it being pulled are so low.
So you're telling me there's a chance.
Yeah. No, look, there's always,
yeah.
Unless the card was destroyed, all 10 of them, which in this case you don't.
Mm-hmm. Are there, can I ask this too? Is there any images out there of any of them? Like you haven't found a single thing. That's so interesting. So really there's no hive mind here who knows what happened there.
It's just look. There's over 100 cards in the set. Robert Pack. Most people don't even remember that name. So like, it was a common product, like I said. So like, you didn't have big collectors opening this stuff like you do now and keeping every single card. A lot of the stuff, it's over 120 chances for all 10 copies to go missing or whatever, or not be pulled. Like it's totally possible. I thought there were 3 of them, but now thankfully there's only 1. But I don't know. We'll see. You never know. The manufacturer could have forgotten to put them in. Like, there's all sorts of reasons why the set may never be completed.
It's funny. We'll chat in 10 years and it's like, okay, we can call the search off. Like they just don't exist. It's over. It's done. Yeah. So I'll ask you this. I'm an engineer as a background. I love like statistics here. So let's say there's 10 copies here and we're talking about a non super like desired player. We're not talking about a Jordan, but like one of these more common cards. If you had to guess, like again, in a high level sense, we have 10 copies. Where do you think those 10 end up? I just want to put numbers to this. Like if you had to guess off of your experience here, if we're saying there's 10, do you think
2 are in packs, 2 will never go back in circulation because they're in a binder somewhere. 3 are in, Asia, 3 are here. Like, have you put your thought to that before?
At most 1 or 2 are in packs. Like I doubt it's 2 on average. I bet it's more like 1 or if any. Because there can't be that many boxes left open. I mean, unopened. There's probably hundreds. Like I doubt there's thousands of. I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing. I mean, I've got like 10, and like they're really hard to come by. And so like I just can't imagine there's, that many boxes out there. And odds of pulling a green are pretty low. Case hit, maybe even rarer, probably, I would say. Probably every 3 or 4 cases. So you're talking maybe 1 out of 50 boxes. Like, I'm just making that up. In my experience of opening these things, because there's no pack odds for them. Like reds seem like a case hit, like every 12 to 24 boxes, somewhere in that range. So yeah, and I think there's probably 2 to 4 have been lost forever, childhood collections that mom threw away. And then, the rest are scattered across the world. Weirdly, PMG greens are all, 90s, because of Jordan, is very international. Like, you don't see that in vintage baseball or vintage basketball. Like 90s in particular is very all over the world. So yeah, they're everywhere. If I go back and look at all my PMG greens, honestly, probably most of the big ones were international. Like Jordan, for sure. Rodman, yes. Iverson was international. Garnett, like all the big guys except Kobe. Kobe may have been. I bought that out. Actually, no, that was international too. The guy I bought it on eBay. The guy was in Korea. So like, yeah, it's a very international set.
It makes you wonder too, like just hearing this now, it comes to mind, like how and where were these acquired back then, right? Because eBay is 1999, I think, right? The inception of the internet, eBay popularity, right?
eBay was before that. I joined eBay in 99. It was. I think it was before that.
Okay, so it would have been around from the inception of this set, essentially, right? So maybe, it could have been a way these people are grabbing them. I'm just curious how they end up in Asia. Have you got?
Well, yes, yeah. Well, there's a whole history of this. Like in Japan, there was a shop RB21, which was actually an awesome. They had a store, I think, in California too. We have an employee at PSA actually who used to work at the LA store.
Oh, weird. That's awesome.
Like, RB21 has that famous, video with like all the greens, like 4 Kobe's and whatever. So like they were a big importer, if you will, of 90s basketball cards for Japan. China, there were a lot of people going back and forth. The NBA was going there a ton, especially with LeBron and like 03 starting then. And, and then you had France. I found a few PMG greens in Jordan. That makes sense because of the 90s NBA push to Europe. But yeah, there were shops and there were dealers, and you still see that. Like when I started getting really back into cards in 2010, like I never really stopped. That's when I was like, all right, I'm going to go all in on Jordan cards, for example, and Kobe. There were still people, I still remember their names, that were like, live in China, but they'd come to New York or LA like once or twice a year and do deals. And then we still know, a lot of these people still are dealers at PSA. They fly in, and a lot of them were at the National. They had a briefcase full of cards from their clients in China or Japan or wherever.
Awesome. I appreciate the insight. Like, just not a topic I've heard a lot about, so I really appreciate. And again, you know some of this, so it's good to know.
People don't really realize. The number of big cards in China in particular is astounding.
Is that number climbing? Would you say, like at this point, do you feel like, based on your pulse of the hobby here, like, are there still cards? Is there net positive of cards going out to China, or do you think we're pulling them back in at this point to America in general?
I don't know. I think it's pretty stable. I don't think it's increased. I look at who I deal with and stuff. It's still seems softer in China right now because of the macroeconomic situation over there. There's not as much buying from Chinese, buyers, but, yeah, it's just the stuff that I know is there is just
mind-boggling. So quick question for you then. One more I want to kind of touch on maybe this set in particular. Have you seen any drawbacks to sharing your list through this whole time? Like, have you have any interactions or any situations where it's like, dang, I wish I didn't share that I needed this player because of something happened, or has it been a net positive and something you'd recommend in general to others listening who collect sets?
I think it depends on the set you're collecting. Like in my case, I made a decision. I don't know if it was conscious or unconscious, but I remember I was like, all right, I'm going to talk about the cards. Like when I posted a card, like here are the ones I still need. And that was because I wanted people helping me find them. Like the Brian Grant, for example, like I didn't find that. Like 15 people on Instagram sent me a link to this, collector in Japan who posted a shadow box with like 15 cards as a photo on Instagram. And one of the cards in the bottom right corner, he had, I think, a Karl Malone green too. It was Brian Grant. And so like, if I hadn't shared that list, I don't think I would have, like gotten that. I would, maybe not, but I may have not gotten that lead. So that's that. I mean, I have had a situation with a particular card where for a while it was the only one that I knew of, and a guy wanted 3 times what it was worth, and it felt very gougy to me, and it left a really bad taste in my mouth. And thankfully another one popped up, and now I don't need his. So, karma's a bitch sometimes, but I'm sure he wants that card and he's fine keeping it. But that's one downside. But like in general, the benefit of having like some good Samaritans out there looking out for you is and for your set is more than the cost of, but like if it's a common set that there's a lot of, I know, look, there's other people who are like deadly quiet and serious about their set collecting, and to each their own.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Do you feel like that's more useful or prevalent maybe on, let's say, like, I'm just making this up, but like if you're going for the 97 metal universe and a PSA 10, something that's maybe reasonable to find, very hard to find still, but reasonable to find.
Yeah, people will bid you up on eBay.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Like, do you feel like that's maybe an example for yourself where it's like, okay, maybe I don't need to go out on these 10 that I'm looking for because I know I can find one and I don't want people bidding me up?
Yeah, that's a good example. I mean, but again, like you weigh it, depending on the set. I mean, I think it's like another good one is the 2012 Gold Prism. I'm chasing that set. Like there's only 10 of those too. And it's actually nice to have people, oh, you need this, you need that. And so I have, in that case, I don't really put it on Instagram. It's more just like on the PSA set registry, which is public, but that's a little harder. Like not everyone goes there to, track what people have and don't have.
That's funny you say that. So the reason I asked you is that I'm working on is the 2013 Select football golds, like first year Select there. Yeah. And I've shared from the beginning. And now, I'm probably similar to you. You run into it now where people say, hey, I have this card. You offer what I feel very strong based on what I've bought and others at. The most likely scenario has ended up being either you make a deal or they want way more. Then it goes to auction. You win it for way less than you offered. And it's been good, but maybe just the economic situation maybe drives part of that as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing that. So then I did turn to Instagram for a few questions, Nat. I didn't mention that I'd be interviewing you, but just kind of mention, well-known set collector. What are some questions you may have? And I think these are questions that would be very helpful to anyone listening, especially if they're new to the hobby. So Iowa Dave asked, do you enjoy the chase or the completion more, and why? And you were talking similar to this before, so I almost asked right away, but I wanted to wait till we chat a little bit more.
Oh, I mean, the chase for sure. I mean, the completion of a set is in many ways somber and like, oh, well,
it's a funeral.
Yeah. What do I do now? But it's so, yeah, it's chase.
Chase 100%. Yeah. Okay, awesome. And then, so Mad City Collector and Drake's PC, they both kind of asked a similar thing. And I'd love to hear your perspective on this. So other than players, what qualities of a set make you want to collect it? As you're looking at the sets that maybe up to this point you've collected or look to in the future, what makes you want to collect a set besides the players?
It's a great question.
I say these people, that's why I ask. I mean, these people on Instagram, man, they know what they're saying.
In my case, it's very nostalgic driven, like cards or sets or inserts, parallels, whatever, that are special to me because it brings me back to like some feeling I had as a kid, like Duncan Go Nuts, a good example. Like I remember those cards in the card shop. Like we're all trying to like relive, our childhoods in some way, or reconnect with them, I guess. So yeah, I think that's a big one for me. Players that I love, well, that's less set, but like player sets, like LeBron and Jordan, like those are guys that I worship, so that's pretty, like I'm collecting Steve Francis. Like no one in the right mind should be collecting Steve Francis, but like that was my guy in 1999, living in Houston as a kid. Like that's who I I dreamed of having his, credentials, from EX, for example.
So I age myself here, but that's Stevie Franchise, right? That's the nickname.
Yeah.
At least I know that. That's good.
No, he was in the dunk contest with Vince Carter and McGrady, and I mean, yeah. Anyway, yeah, nostalgia driven. I mean, set design's important to me. Like, I collect stuff that looks cool. I generally try and collect stuff that's rare, but not always. Like, I'm collecting tons of base sets from the 90s and 2000s. That are $50 in a 10. Like, but they're really cool designs, or they're important sets to the hobby. Like, metal's a great example. What's another good one? Like, first year Topps Chrome refractors from 96. Like, you can buy but I'm actually collecting these raw too. I have the old binders, and like, that's set. I mean, you could buy commons for $5 to $15, right? But like, first year Topps Chrome refractors are pretty special. 93 finest refractors, the first refractor officially. Like, there were holograms and stuff prior, but like, that's pretty cool. That's a historically important set, if you will. So that's another one.
Something
like,
that kind of establishes the legacy there when you have that first year, and kind of it drives something that was popular.
Like 52 tops, like, that's I mean, there was 51 tops, but it's, redbacks and stuff. But like, that 51 tops is really the first true baseball card set from Topps. Like, that's very important as a set. Exquisite 03, first, thick card. I mean, really, there were RPAs in 01, but like, that's really that was a pretty groundbreaking set. So
those are the cards you send to PSA, and you used to get the really thick ones, and now you get the nice ones. I've liked those. I've been getting those back. They're pretty nice.
Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah.
They don't feel much. Well, it's like if you handle a lot of cards, you do notice the feel different, but the thickness you really don't notice, which is absurd to me. I don't know. Some engineering went into that. That's all.
Yeah, we have an awesome engineering team. In fact, we quietly roll out a lot of these things. That one we're a little more open about, but our core basic holder for just standard cards is actually much improved, and we quietly released that, and it's 20% heavier.
Okay. Because
the plastic is much more higher quality and UV resistant. So for displaying.
So the UV resistant, is that we're talking like greening or autographs? Like, it helps with that kind of thing, or is this
that blanching?
What's blanching? Could you explain what that is?
It's just like if you leave a newspaper out in the sun, like the ink will fade.
Yep. Okay, that's awesome. I appreciate it. And I guess one question with the holders there too, you're mentioning the thick has changed, the improved quality in general. I've noticed too, like less rattling around of cards. Is that a deliberate change as well?
Yeah, the new case is tighter fitting.
Okay.
Now the downside is if the card is most people think every card is the same size. Unfortunately, they're not. Even in like 2023 or 2022 Prism, like, cards are small, cards are big. So for a standard size 2.5 by 3.5 card, the new holder is tighter fitting. Or cards that are oversized will revert back to the old one. Because we have a stock of those, and for undersized cards, we also revert back because you don't want them rattling in our new case either. So we do Mylar sleeves to keep the card a little more secure. But yeah, the new case is the movement's not a bad thing. It's as long as the straight. I mean, you want to minimize it, but as long as no corners hitting an edge. If a straight edge is hitting a straight edge, it's fine. But if the card can tilt and be exposed to a corner, or a corner can be exposed to an edge, that's a problem.
Yeah, defeats the purpose of the encasement, I'm sure.
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, depends on how you store it and ship it and whatever. But yeah.
So another question, I guess, came to mind off of, again, what you're kind of saying, and having collected a ton of different sets. Are there any specific ones you'd love to like call out that you've really enjoyed? I know you mentioned a few, but like, are there any that, like, again, has been really driven by nostalgia? It's maybe not a set that most collect, but you've either finished or just had a ton of fun that, again, if somebody's listening and their budget isn't, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they maybe are looking for a fun set to collect. Do you have any ideas, any recommendations there that you've really enjoyed?
Yeah, I mean, for everyone, it's their own personal preference, but I mean, I have really enjoyed collecting 97 Fleer Tiffany's, Tim Duncan, McGrady rookie year. Those are really cool and cheap. I mean, you can buy even the superstars or less than $100 raw. 96 finest refractors are really cool.
I have to look up a picture. For some reason, that doesn't ring a bell. I need to see.
Well, Kobe's rookie year. I mean, you've got.
Never mind. I just have players in it.
Those are basketball. I mean, that's one. I mean, Kobe's a few $100 raw, but like everyone else is, commons are $5 and under, but those cards are beautiful, especially the gold ones.
That's with the Kobe, like the back turned and
Yeah.
what I don't remember what does it say on there? It says air something, or
Yeah,
right?
or a parent or something. Yeah, yeah, exactly. The gold
Something
one.
like
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. What does it say? I'll pull it up. But yeah, the other one that I think is really cool is 99 finest gold refractors. It's the first serial numbered gold refractor ever, which is like
Okay.
a big deal now, right? Gold.
And that's basketball and football, right? Ironically, I've been doing some of the football ones. I think it's the same for both. I mean,
I don't
football
know
definitely
actually.
is the
That's a
first.
good question if it's football too.
Because basketball is the same, where you have it's out of 100, you have the peel, right? I would
Yeah.
assume it's got to be similar.
Yeah.
Oh, and baseball too. Baseball has this too, right? I've seen some of these baseball refractors, I think.
It just says heirs, HEIRS.
Oh.
Yeah, baseball has. I mean, there's so many cool sets like
Mhm.
that are. I mean, again, commons are $10 or less. They're really cool. I mean, you get into like rubies and stuff, and like even commons are $500. It starts to get a little crazy.
Yeah.
But I think the refractors are really underrated.
Mhm.
96 Topps Chrome in particular is so underrated. They're so difficult condition wise too. Centering, greening, print lines, scratches, indentions. I mean, it's such a difficult set. I mean, any grade, if you can
Mhm.
complete that set, it's a big deal. In fact, the guy who has the highest rated set for that 96 Topps Chrome refractor won a pretty big award at the PSA Set Registry dinner this year at the National.
How do those awards work? I was curious on that because I know I've enjoyed the set registry. It sounds like you do as well. How does the team decide on awards? Like what are the details on that? I'd just be curious if anyone's listening and does, the set registry already or has an interest in it.
Yeah, it's a process. I mean, we have a dedicated PSA Set Registry team. We have one for coins too with PCGS. That team ultimately decides. I'm a one vote, basically in this committee, but they curate important sets that are difficult to complete. It has nothing to do with how valuable or expensive a set may be. It's really the importance of that set, how difficult it was to complete, and really the showing the essence of a true collector. Like you accomplish something that, as other collectors, your peers would say is a feat. And that's really what it is. So the 97 metal base set, guy number one got one of the awards this year. Those are the two.
How close is he to is he like a full 10? Is that what he's
No,
going
it's not
for?
a full 10.
It's got to be impossible, right?
That's a mass produced set from the
Yeah.
90s, not that long ago. And the number one set's not all 10s. It shows you how difficult that is. No, it's not all 10s, but the Topps Chrome refractor 96 also is not all 10s, but it's pretty damn close.
What I'm hearing is, Nat's thinking like, maybe I got a chance. Maybe I'll get up there.
I am doing both those sets, but I mean, I'm number two in the refractor one, and I don't know what I am in the other one. But
how much of this set collecting would you say? Obviously your day to day, you have, I'm sure, working a lot with PSA, working a lot with these other companies that Collector's Zone. How much your day to day is just sitting here hunting cards like the rest of us? Like, do you find yourself doing a ton of that as well? Still sitting on eBay with the save searches, ComC, that kind of thing?
I do hours a day of that, but none of it's during, none of it's during the working hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate it. And then one other question that just comes to mind, and I'm not sure that I've gotten a real creative answer to this one. And maybe you're similar where it's kind of like we haven't found a solution, but you work on these sets, you put all this time into it. They look so beautiful together. Have you found a real nice way to display it? Like, I know you mentioned like raw cards in a binder. Like, to me, that's like the epitome, but like, you know what I mean? Have you found a good way with all your sets to display them besides in like a, shoebox or something
So
like
this
that?
guy, I still don't know his name, but this guy made this for me. Can you see that on the wall?
Yeah, I can. Yep.
Okay, that's a poster. Unfortunately, it's not a. But I mean, look, a lot of people think it's real. It's the same size cards and stuff. So I had a shadow box created like that has shelves, and the cards lean back against the background of the box, and it has plexiglass with a lock. That stores 60 cards, I think, and it looks really nice. And I have one for packs too. But honestly, I think displaying cards can be risky, depending on light exposure, theft, blah blah blah. It doesn't make me feel very comfortable doing it ever, and so I don't really have high end stuff in those shadow boxes. I do display unopened boxes because I've recreated my childhood card shop in my office at home, which is super cool. Like I have a row for 97, a row for 98, and sports, and the whole thing. Because those display really well, and I'm not worried about light exposure because the raw cards are not exposed. So yeah, that's for cards themselves. I use a lot of the little stands, the card stands to have one. I have a bunch of those on shelves.
Little easels or whatever you call it,
Yeah.
like a little, yeah.
We're working on some ideas though. We have some clever ideas. I think there's a lot of startups that are trying different things with displaying cards. I don't hear it a ton, I think most people I know like just having the cards in boxes or in safes because for security reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like kind of more satisfying to flip through them like you did, like holding them as opposed to looking at them on the wall. But
yeah, I always think though, like to some extent, like you said too, you guys are thinking of ideas, but I just think, the chase, during the chase, I want to be shuffling. But when it's done, man, if I could just throw it on the wall somehow, somewhere in a nice way. But it sounds like you're thinking the same thing.
It's hard too because there's hundreds of cards in a set.
Yeah, at least 100, 100, 150. That makes it really, really tricky.
Someone does need to build a wall display for like 10 cards and have it be really. Someone sent me one for my kids. It was really nice. It was like a frame. It was but a player. So like his jersey was around the card. You magnetic strips. You attach the card. It puts one card in. I really enjoyed those, and my kids love it. They have them on their wall, like for your favorite player. But it's like a one card display thing.
Awesome. So I'll ask this question that I'm kind of curious on. It kind of ties to another side of this conversation, but you've been collecting for super long now, right? I mean, I mentioned that Josh interview a few times now. It was 4 years ago, right? And he asked you, I caught that about, staleness kind of. Are you ever at the point where you like run out of things to chase? In 2023, do you feel that at all? How are you just creative? You just keep looking? Do you have any tips for somebody listening who maybe feels a little stale?
No, I've never had that issue. I mean, there's always something cool out there. I mean, if you're into an era like a 90s for me, like there's, even 80s, which wasn't that creative of a decade for cards. I mean, you can collect, probably hundreds of different things, sets or inserts or whatever. But no, I think for me, it's pick a single card that you get really excited about, and then, try collecting the set thereafter. For me, it's again the cards that I remember as a kid really wanting, Jordans or Francis or Kobe or whoever it was, Duncan's. And then what I find is once you get that, like the Tiffany is a good example, Fleer Tiffany. Like I had the Duncan, I'm like, shit, that's a great set, and then 5 days later I'm on ComC and I bought 100 of the base card, like Tiffany. Like that's the way I would do it. Like start with one card that's special to you and then branch out to the set.
Do player pairings drive anything for you? Like if you say, and again, it sounds like, for some of this, you've just gone after the whole set, but like, do you ever have a really rare, like, I'm thinking like I know you have those 1-of-1s for Jordan 97. I think you still have 3 of the 4 for Flair Legacy. Do you ever see those and then think, oh man, it'd be really cool to have player X, Y, and Z who maybe have some connection to Jordan? Like, is part of your collecting driven by that, or are you more of a set collector, would you say at this point?
More of a set and player collector. Like I'll stick to, Jordans and then certain sets.
That makes sense.
I do have some like Bulls runs. Like I have it's a good example. Like some Topps Chrome refractors from 98, or 97. I have the, like PSA 10s and Rodman, like the Bulls team that won that year.
And kind of pairing them up to just, line up those memories. Like you said, the nostalgia a little bit for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I have like 8 of them, like Harper's on there and Burrell, and it's cool to have them.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So one question too, this one's from 740 Smith Cards. He asked if you have a website that you trust the most. And I think this comes in mind for like researching sets. Like, as a collector, you're out and about, again, you're trying to research a set, obviously PMG Green probably has some good documentation out there, but for some of these other really niche sets, do you have any sites that you go to or you just Google and try your best to find information?
Cardboard Connection's probably the best. Trading Card DB maybe second. ComC is actually, their data structure is probably the cleanest.
I realized recently you can look at their sold out. I didn't realize that. So you can type sold out and then see ones that are on there.
You can see things like serial number, like what should the serial number be to, and that kind of stuff, which is nice. I'm biased, but like PSA Set Registry is pretty damn good too. So yeah, I all those sources. Yeah, that's really it. I mean, there's not. It died. I tried to get a Wikipedia for cards off the ground. What did I even call it? Collector Wiki, I think is what I called it. But I couldn't get enough people to contribute content. Like I was the only one writing. Yeah.
You have to restart that in 2024. That's your New Year's resolution. Let's see it.
Yeah. No, we actually have some really cool stuff we're working on at PSA for 90s basketball content.
So we'll have to look out for that towards the end of this year then, or early next year.
Definitely not this year. I wish, but
yeah.
You got to join Collectors Club first, and then you'll get access to it. PSA Collectors Club.
Yeah, got to get the benefits. Those magazines, by the way, side note, have looked phenomenal. Is that was driven by you? Who drove that idea?
No, we have a guy. My only ask was that they changed the name to the PSA Magazine. That's the only contribution I really made.
What was it prior?
SMR, Sports Market Report.
Oh, that's interesting. So it kind of, because when I hear it now, it's more geared towards content, right? It's not necessarily just pricing, which is kind of nice. Probably
it has the price side still. Yeah.
Yep.
No, we have an awesome guy named Jack Archer, who is the editor of the magazine. He's a fantastic designer, and I would just say steward of cards and sports and content for us. I mean, he does a lot more than just the magazine, but he picks the articles we're going to run, the structure of it all, coordinates the photography. It's getting a lot better, and it's got even more room to go, I think, to improve. So yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Awesome. I've definitely enjoyed it. So one final question I stole from Instagram again here. So this came from @CardboardInsights. He wanted to know, what role do duplicates play in your set collecting? And I think I know the answer. You already kind of mentioned it, but I'd love to hear the insight on why your answer is the way it is.
Duplicates drive me crazy. So I actually so I don't want duplicates. I collect one of everything in whatever it is I'm collecting, with very few exceptions, if any. For me, I've always found they're nuisances because I want to find them, because I have so many cards. I need to find them so I can trade. I put them in a trade folder, or I dump them on Golden or eBay, and I pay my son $1. He's 8 years old now, to locate duplicates. Like I'll give him like a giant bin of like 1975 Topps minis. I'm just like, find me two of the same card. And if one's a 9 or an 8, he knows, give me the 8 so I can dispose of it. Right. They just take up space. As far as I live in New York City, I mean, I need to minimize the number of cards. And it's amazing. Like if I go searching for dupes, like I'll find like 50 in a night, like I'll spend 3 hours if a game's on, like literally just opening briefcases and boxes and safes, and it's a fun mental exercise. I'm like, I remember I had that Alonzo Mourning refractor an hour ago, and then I go on Flickr because I have a photo of every card, and then I figure it out, and I can sell this one or trade it, whatever. But yeah, I don't believe in dupes personally. This is not the reason, but it's a nice side effect. It's like it lets other collectors have access to such a rare card, perhaps like a PMG red or something, but that's not the primary motivation. But yeah, I know some collectors, a good friend of mine, like he's the exact opposite of me. He cares about like 10 cards, and he wants as many copies of each as possible.
Is the intention to trade them at some point in case he needs it for other things? No, just once in a while.
Yeah. No, and it's like I don't relate to that at all. But I'm the exact opposite. But I mean, everyone has their own collecting style, and yeah, dupes are not. I try and upgrade cards. I sometimes have more than one because I bought a raw card trying to get a better grade and it didn't, or whatever, and I'll sell or trade the lesser grade.
Awesome. Appreciate it. So Nat, I know you have a stop at 3, so I want to make sure I can get through this last bit here. I was wondering if we could wrap up with like a fast 5. So I'm going to toss you 5 quick questions. Should be fairly reasonable answers here. Hopefully not too tricky, but they're fun ones that, I've enjoyed, especially I'll enjoy hearing from you what your answer is here. So the first question is, if you go back, you're now a new collector. You can only collect 1 year of cards, but it can be all players, all sports in that year. What year is it? And it can't be 1997. So what year is it?
Damn it.
That's the answer everybody gives. I've had to veto that at this point.
No, everyone said that?
Yeah, most people say 97. If they're anything regarding 90s, if they have any interest in that, it's always 97.
I'm going to go 03.
03. I guess that's a good one too. Yeah, of course.
Well, it gets so little credit. There was, Fleer, there was like 58 sets that year. And like
Seriously, oh, I didn't realize that.
Fleer was in business. I'm just going off of how many rookie cards I know there are of LeBron, but like just base cards, like forget the parallels. I mean, yeah, you had Fleer Skybox still at its, full production. You had Upper Deck with Exquisite and Ultimate and everything. You had Topps doing its thing. I mean, it was really the beginning of the end, right? With all the card companies starting to merge or get exclusives. And you had LeBron. So
yeah, nice guy to come in on it. Are there, out of the other sports for 03, I'm just trying to remember, are there any key rookies out of the other sports? I can't think of anything off. Definitely not football, I don't think. I can't
No, I
recall
don't
a
think
single
so.
guy in football.
Baseball is pretty dark era, dark
Yeah.
decade.
So LeBron's going to champion that collection
Yeah.
for you there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So the next question here is, again, we talked about 97 a lot. It's clearly a set you're a big fan of. So if you're looking at base cards alone, what's your favorite, let's say, dark horse, like underrated design for a player? Because I know they're all so unique. I'd love to hear if you have one that is just.
All right, what? Say that again. Like for 97 metal or in general?
Yeah, 97 metal. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah. So for 97 metal, is there any Marbury? What's that design look like?
Oh man. Well, see, the legend for this set is that Gene and Earl Arena were working at Skybox, and they apparently was in the same building as Marvel, and I think Marvel may have been upstairs. And they walked upstairs and basically asked for help in illustrating. But Marbury has the same as, I think, Phil's. Let me verify that. But it's like checkerboard, almost like green. It's just a very iconic. In my opinion, it's just a really cool design. Is it Phil's?
I'll definitely, for the video, I'll throw up a visual here because now I'm curious too. I'm gonna Google it. I'm cheating.
Yeah, same as Phil's. I remember that, right? That's funny. Yeah, but a lot of the players reused it. So they had different, like, for example, Penny Hardaway is the same as Jordan.
Oh, yeah, that actually makes sense now that you say that. For some reason, I thought they were all unique. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you know what I really love is the rookies in there, like Duncan, which you told me to pick, like not them, but like Duncan and McGrady, or have their like Vegas Summer League jerseys on, and like Crozier as well. Like freaking aw, that's cool. Yeah, but I would say Marbury's the one I remember of, like, that's such a cool design. Yeah, and then Rodman's as well. I can't pick a good player.
That's fair. He's underrated enough, right? He's not number 1 or 2. No.
Yeah. Well, the problem with the red and greens is that the design, it obfuscates the design of the actual base card pretty big. Like you can't, because it's just one color.
That's funny you say that, because again, we talked about a Barry on this 2 weeks ago, and I didn't know what the design looked like. So I asked him, and he's like, "Well, on the red, you can't really see." It's the tricky part.
Cedric Sabala. So the not the PMG, because like I said, it's just green or red, but the base is just really I want to say it was purple, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, exactly. It's got okay. So if it's the base card, not the Precious, I'm going with Sabalos.
Okay.
Go look at that one up.
Like I said, I'll cheat, and after this episode, I have to look it up, and I'll put a visual here so people can see.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Third question here. Does Nat Turner sell cards?
Yeah. I sell the duplicates.
Well, I guess, you're not throwing the duplicates in a landfill. It's probably obvious.
No,
you're not donating them either, I'd assume.
I sell cards I'm not interested in anymore. So, like, if it's a set that I lost interest in, like a good example, I stopped caring about gold prisms after 2012, and I had like hundreds from 2013 through 2020, and I sold like pretty much every single one of them because A, they were taking up way too much space, and B, I just wasn't getting any enjoyment out of those cards whatsoever. 2012 though, I love. I think it's a beautiful, seminal design, but if it's something I like, no, it's not. I try not to. I mean, I've had such times where I've needed to sell something for whatever reason, like, if someone, or traded, like, if there's a card I needed, there's a period of time where I didn't have thankful to have money. Like at times I didn't, years ago, like I needed to, like I sold 2 of 3. I had 3 game jersey auto Jordans from 97. I sold 2 of them to generate funds to, buy probably PMG greens at the time. This is 13 years ago.
Good fourth question. I'm gonna cheat here. So you mentioned obviously having been collecting, prior to, let's say, your business success outside of cards, obviously, right? I'll put it this way, is your inspiration still the same? Like, has anything
Oh,
changed since you've had, the opportunity to maybe buy some of these more expensive cards? Like I feel like the vibe that I've gotten so far from talking to you is that you still appreciate the same sets that you've always loved. I mean, that hasn't changed since you've had success outside, professionally or anything like that.
yeah. I mean, it sounds crazy. I've said it before. Like the value of the card doesn't really matter to me.
Hmm.
Meaning, like, I have cards that are worth $100 that I would, putting money aside, would rather have than like the PMG Green Jordan. Actually, that's not true. PMG Green Jordan, but like
I was gonna say, what's this $100 card,
no, but
Nat?
there's some Francis cards, for example, that like I'd rather have versus some very valuable vintage baseball cards, for example, that are really rare. Because again, it's like nostalgia is a very powerful thing. Like you're not as old as me, but like the older you get, the more and more you try and you go back to places that bring you good memories, and you collect things that bring you good memories, and the value is irrelevant at that point. Now, if you're, I'm fully self-aware that, like, if you're lucky enough to be able to hold on to very valuable cards and, not have them burn a hole in your, like, because, the alternative is, they're very expensive. You could sell them. There's an opportunity cost of parking that money with those cards. Like, I'm lucky to have the means to do that. But again, putting that aside, it's not the most important thing. So for me, it's the nostalgic value of the cards. Like with LeBron, I was a senior in high school when he was a rookie, and like I would sit there and watch every game in high school that they would stream, and then I think I watched every pro game of his from 03 through 2017, 15
Wow.
years, 14 years. So like those cards in 03, I would sit and make a checklist in Excel as a senior in high school. I want every single one of those. Like, you can't really replace that. So
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Appreciate it. And then fifth and final question. What do you envision your 2024 hobby experience to look like? Like what are you excited about moving forward as a collector? Are there things that you really looking forward to hunt down? Is there things going on in the hobby that you're excited about? I'd love to hear, maybe just a couple things you're thankful for or excited about.
I mean, what I collect, thankfully, is not going to change because
Mhm.
the stuff I collect, they're not printing any more of it. I don't collect any of the new stuff. I'll open boxes here and there, mostly with my kids, but I've been really focused on that old stuff, 90s and earlier, 2003,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. So no, hopefully it won't be that different.
Good. Keep
Yeah.
enjoying the same
Yeah.
cards, same eras.
I would love to find more on open wax of the stuff I love. I mean,
Mhm.
I've gone deeper and deeper down that rabbit hole, which I actually really enjoy.
Bonus question. Any trick to that? Have you found a general trend of how you've been able to find some of these that you can share that doesn't impede your business?
It's so hard. I got
Yeah.
defrauded at the National. I bought an 03
No.
EX box and opened it, and it was full of 1991 score packs football.
Ah,
So like you just have to be really, really, really careful is the number
mhm.
one rule. Like really know who you're buying from. Clear skybox, even if it has the factory wrap on it from 90s, does not mean crap. Like it can be resealed or faked, the seal, the wrapping. I buy BBC stuff for vintage, BBC wrapped vintage baseball and football and basketball. PSA graded packs. I mean, stick
Mhm.
to that if you're doing packs. Boxes from the 90s, you just have to be really careful. Meaning, again, who are you buying from? Get really familiar. Open a lot of it. Like
Mhm.
get familiar with kind of touch and feel and look of it. It's gonna sound crazy. Like even the smell of these boxes, like you can tell right away when a box is fake or not.
Like
If
the old grandma attic cigarette smell or like
yeah,
something
like
like that.
which just like kind of has a moldy. I don't know. It's like it's hard to explain. Like you really, if you're around these things enough,
Mhm.
like you can start to detect it.
It's too bad this isn't like a 5D recording and maybe you could like supply some scent that we could distribute to the
Yeah, right.
audience here.
But I mean, eBay's a great source. Golden's a great source. Heritage actually has a lot of good basketball and opened
Mhm.
on it. Stick to the reputable auction houses and the high feedback sellers on eBay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Nat. This was super fun. Great getting to meet you here. Again, this is our first time chatting. So just really appreciate the opportunity and thanks for hopping on.
No problem. Thanks.